Right, morning boys and girls. What I want to show you this morning is all about the distributor. It's an addendum, and you'll all have to work on a distributor eventually. So I might as well show you right now how to get the best out of your distributor. You don't need to go spending money on a new one. So I've broken this one down into all its component parts, so you can see there's nothing to be frightened of in this distributor. There's a lot of parts, and there's some very small parts, but you don't need to be scared about it. And there's the smallest part, and I think that must be the smallest part on a car engine. I don't think I've ever seen a part as small as that. And what it actually is a little bent over piece of wire, and it probably was originally a circlip, but it can be as small as that. So you must remember, if you're working on a clean surface like I told you, make sure you've got a fresh clean piece of cardboard, because as we go on and say, it's always free. It's nice and easy to see your parts. You can see that they're all laid out in front of you, so you can tell quite easily where they all are. Make sure you've got your book open to where you're working. This tells you all about the distributor, so you'll have obviously, as I've done, I don't clean the parts until I'm ready to use them. So I broke this distributor down. I gave it a good clean first outside to make sure it was all nice and clean. Then I stripped it down, then I cleaned all the components. And what I'll show you basically is there's two little drain holes in the bottom of there that let the water out. But it's all gets full of crud over 50 years, so it's full of crud, but it's all nice and clean now. So that's the basic body of the distributor. There's a little rubber seal on there, you don't need to worry about that. Now, oil doesn't flow very well uphill, so that's just a preventative thing, but you don't need to worry about that because oil doesn't usually flow uphill. So anyway, I've cleaned the body of the distributor up, and that's what we've got there. And these are the rest of the component parts of it. Inside you've got these balance weights, and what these do, the centrifugal, as the distributor turns, they just advance and retard the ignition. Now you don't have to strip these down. I've never had to bother stripping them down. They're usually quite rusty, so what you need to do, give them a good scraping degreaser, clean them up, and then just give them a squirt with the get the old oil can and just give it a little squirt, and that'll do you for that. As long as you can see that they're quite easily moving. Both the balance weights are moving. They're very loose, so you can see. Don't strip it down because they are a bit fiddly to put back in. If you're competent enough, have a go at it. There's nothing much to it, nothing to be scared of, so you can do that. Underneath, you'll follow the manual, of course, because that'll tell you where all the component parts are. But I know that this little plastic washer goes on the bottom of here. If it's on the bottom of the shaft, and what that does, it helps it seat in the bottom of the distributor. It's got a bevel on it, and that'll help it seat. And then I'm going to put this into the bottom of the distributor like so. Make sure it turns nice and freely. It's all tight, everything's tight in the shaft, so it's not rattly, so we don't need to worry about replacing that. And that's it, it's turning quite easily. Turn it upside down, and at the bottom of that shaft there's a washer. You can see which way it's been round because there's a little ring on it, and that ties up with that ring there, ties up with that, so we can slip that on. Now this one here, this is the drive. This is the drive. I mean, you'll follow your manual, obviously. This is the drive. I'm just showing you how easy it is to repair these engines. That fits over the shaft, and that's held in place. Make sure it's located into the centre, and there's a hole goes through, because that has got a split pin that goes through it. There's this little split pin here, so we'll pop that split pin in, and we'll give it a little tap through. You'll find that yours is a little bit tighter than that. That's not a very good fit. So what I do in that instance, so we don't have any problems, I'm just going to put a little bit of thread lock on there. And that'll seat that in place. That'll help hold that pin in place, because that pin is quite slack. And before I put it back in the engine, I'll give it another squirt of that as well. That's just got to you've just got to make sure that that pin, see, it's quite slack in there, but that'll hold it in there. That's into the block anyway. Yours will be tighter than that, so don't worry about that, and I'm not worried about it. So that's the base done. This little woodruff key here, you might think it looks identical, but it's not. It's actually offset a little bit. because that's designed so it'll only fit one way into the distributor drive. So you can't get it wrong when you're installing your distributor. It'll only fit one way into the cam, and we know we've set the cam right because I showed you how to do that on the last video. So we're back to the front now, and that's the balance weights are in place. I could set that down. What we've got now is the base plate of the points. This is in two pieces. These are what your points actually fit onto, and this I'll show you how easy this is to fit together, because I've sprayed that with a little bit of white grease just to keep it nice and easily moving. You've got a little spring behind there. So first of all, you've got to make sure that that little lobe fits onto that little spring, under that little spring, and then just twist it round like so, and that'll locate into that little round recess, and then give it a twist, and that's your base plate assembled. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. Now, with these things being 50 years old, somebody at some point has changed the screw on this. I know that that's not the right screw, because that's the right screw there, and that's what goes in to hold the base plate to the base of the distributor. But because of this, because it was different, what I did before I stripped the distributor down, when I noticed it was the wrong one, I actually marked the distributor body to remind me that screw that's not the original screw goes on that side of the base plate. So what we do is we pop the base plate over. Not rocket science, guys. Follow your manual. This little thing here, this little earthing lead, I know that that's held in place with the other side base plate screw. Now, it's not a big long job. These videos, I think YouTube only let you allow to have 15 minutes, so hopefully you can see. I'm just giving you a rough idea of how easy it is to do these jobs. And that's tightened in like so. So that's our base plate in place, and it moves around, because on the bottom of the base plate you'll see there's a little post, and that little post, this is the vacuum advance and retard. There's a vacuum end in there, and that connects to the manifold by a little vacuum pipe. So we'll slot that in there into the body of the distributor. It'll only go in one way. It's difficult holding and making the film for you, but it'll only go in one way, and then you'll see there's a little spring there. That little spring just clips over that little post like so. That little spring's over that little post like so, and that advances and retards your points. You can see when I move it, it's working the base plate. Now inside at the other end of there, you've got a little spring, and we've got a knurled nut, and you've got to force that in there. Pull that back a little bit, so the thread's back a little bit, and then you've got to push that spring with your finger into there like that, and then you can tighten the knurled nut. Don't worry about setting this up, you don't need to worry about the advance and retard, but as I'm turning that nut, I don't know that if you're observant enough, it's actually moving this base plate. Can you see it moving? Anyway, we'll put that in there. Now, I'm not going to do this right now on the video because it takes time and I don't want to spoil the rest of the build. But that very, very tiny little piece of wire, which is probably a circlip on yours if it's never been disturbed, that fits on the end of the knurled nut. You'll see there's a little bevel. You'll see there's a little bevel there. And that piece of wire fits over there like so. If I can get it on, I will. That's probably a circlip, and you can see it's quite slack. So what I'll do it's back on, and I'll just give it a nip with the pliers, which is what obviously the person before me did. And what that's for, it's to stop that knurled nut coming off if in the dark when you're coming back from your night out with your girlfriend after you've been away, or boyfriend, and you have to set your points. That will allow that knurled nut to fall off the end, so that's a safety precaution. So we're not far off rebuilding the distributor now. What we've got next, we've got the points, and this is your main problem with your distributor, is the points don't gap properly, and that's a plastic cam lobe, and that rubs on the shaft of the distributor, look, and that cam opens the points. What happens is that little cam gets dry, and then it stops the points from opening because it wears down, and then the points can't open. So we've put the points on the I'll take it off again and show you. We've got the points, there's the post for the points. So we'll put the points on. The points are held in place by a little screw and a spring washer, and that just holds the points in place. Now you'll probably find that over the years that this might very well not be the original screw, but if it's working when you take it to pieces, it'll be working when you put it back together. And I've just dropped that screw there. This is a live video, guys, and what you see is how it works. This is what happens to you sometimes when you're doing something. I can put these in dozens of times and not have a problem, but because I'm making the video. Remember the little old motto, guys? Put it in with your fingers first. That's in there because I can turn it quite easily. Don't do anything until you can do it with your fingers. And I'm hoping I'm working against the clock here because I want to show you the whole thing. So then we gap the points in there. There's a little recess, and you can turn it with a screwdriver, and what that does, it opens the points. It moves the base plate onto the cam lobe of the points, that top of the cam lobe. You can move that little lever, and you can see that the points will start opening. And now I know that the points want to be round about there. You'll put your feeler gauges in, but you'll see there's a little gap there now, and all you do then is just nip that down. You don't need to tighten it, over tighten it, because it's only holding that points in plate in the thing, in the base plate. So that's that done. The condenser, that fits onto the top of the point. Now clean your terminal up, look, I've cleaned the terminal. That fits in that little recess in the base plate, that condenser. And it's held in place with another very small screw, Phillips screw this time. It might not be a Phillips screw, you might have got a different one over the years, somebody else might have put something else in it. It's all laid out on your cardboard, you'll not lose it. Don't over tighten these things in, they only need to be tight enough to hold them, they're not going anywhere. Just give it a little nip, they're very easily stripped. The condenser goes on there, the lead for the condenser goes on the top of your points. Then you've got the switch side. The video camera fell off. Then you've got your switch side of your points. That little post there slides into the distributor like so, and the other end of that wire goes onto there as well. So you've got two wires onto your points. One goes at the bottom and one goes on the top, and they're held in place with a little they're held in place. You've got one wire at the bottom, one wire at the top. I'm sorry I dropped the camera and it's knocked it off balance, but I'm working against the clock here for you guys. Needless to say, you would tighten that up with whatever means you can tighten it up with. You're not going to tighten it up. It's not a cylinder head bolt. It just needs to be nipped up enough to make the connection and make it tight so it's not loose. Don't over tighten these things. They're very, very fragile. Just tight enough so that you can see that that's not going to move. It's tight. Then on top of that, we have, we have in the centre of the cap, to hold the balance weights from moving up and down, we've got a little screw there. And if you've just noticed, that was left lying on the top of my clean work area. That was there, stuck on top, and I could see that part just then. And all we do is screw that in, and it stops the balance weights from putting loose inside. That's tightened up nicely. All we do then is locate the rotor arm. There's a groove in the rotor arm. Clean the contact up along the top of the shaft, and there's a little contact inside the rotor arm. Give that a scrape. Make sure it's located in the right location. It'll only go on one way, you can't get it wrong. Clip it on. Clean the rotor arm top up. Clean the edge up. Get your cap. Make sure your cap's nice and clean inside. Fit it onto the distributor like so, and pull the two clips down. Now you'll obviously do that a lot quicker than take your time, and it'll be done a lot slower than what I do it. But that is your distributor, completely stripped down, completely cleaned and rebuilt, and hopefully it's done it in the 10-minute allowed, 15-minute allowed on YouTube. I'll go back and I'll double check everything on here anyway, just to make sure that I haven't missed anything. But there you are, guys, and you'll see that the work surface, I've got nothing left on there except for the tools that I've used for the job, which is those three. My work surface was clean. One job, get your manual, don't over tighten, make sure that you only put your screws in with your finger first, and make sure your area is nice and clean, and you're left with whatever you've used for the job that particular day. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you like what you've seen, subscribe to the channel, and thanks very much for watching.